Learning Styles, Myth or Reality by Dominic Tohill. A presentation for the World Conference on Adult Education, sponsored by UNESCO. Do you know your learning style? Maybe you're visual. Maybe you're auditory. Maybe you're kinesthetic. Which one are you? Well, when it came to learning styles, in 2004, Professor Frank Caulfield and his associates out of the UK wanted to know, is VAK, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, the only type of learning model inventory that's out there? Well, that answer was no. He actually found there were 13 major learning style inventories, instruments, whatever you'd like to call them. But in actual fact, he found that there exists 70 different models. And if you're an educator like I am, that's incredibly confusing. Which one is right? Which one is wrong? If you're a student, it must be doubly confusing, because now you're asking, which one am I? What Caulfield found when he looked at all 70, and specifically those 13 major ones, was that we might be wrong. What he found might be wrong is that learning styles themselves may not exist. So what Caulfield and his team found was that learning styles had very low reliability, very poor validity when they were put under a microscope from a research perspective, and finally that they had really negligible impact on pedagogy. And when he looked at them in a broader scheme, he found that they do nothing more than label individuals. That those who ran them had very vested interests and overblown claims with regards to their effectiveness. This literature review is asking the question, are learning styles under attack? That answer is yes. So, less than 2 weeks ago, March 13th, kicked off Brain Awareness Week in the UK, and 30 academics signed an open letter to the Guardian newspaper. And in that letter, they asked British educators to do one thing. Stop teaching learning styles. They don't exist, and they're a neuromyth. For one of the very first times that I know of, an educational issue that has taken place in the world of academia had now crossed over into the public domain. And I found this topic extraordinarily fascinating. There are really two schools of thought as to are learning styles neuromyths, and are they not? Those in red are the academics who believe they don't exist. They really do have to be abolished. And those in green say, no. They have value, will continue to have value, and teachers in and of themselves should continue using them. What we'd like to do now is take a look at both sides of the argument. In the open letter to The Guardian, the 30 academics truly believe that there has never been shown any effectiveness of learning styles. In fact, what they found was that the evidence consistently showed that they don't work, or that they had very, very weak actual effect on students. In 2016, Letheby and Harries took this one step further. What they believe is actually when you incorporate learning styles into your content development, into your lesson plans, you actually do more damage than good. An example might be this. Let's just say you threw a picture of something up on a screen. That would be for your visual learners. To reinforce the point, you would have some verbiage that listed along with it, kind of like the way we're looking at this now. And then finally, you would hear my voice. Well, when they looked at the 3 different types of adding them all together, they found that the brain can actually be overwhelmed. Instead of going right for the one part of the brain that you think is actually learning, you're not. You're overwhelming the brain. And this takes us back to kind of where did VAK get its start? It got its start when people began looking and visualizing the brain through CAT scans and MRIs. And what they noticed is that when somebody saw something, certain parts of the prefrontal cortex of your brain would light up. When you heard something, a different part would light up. And when you touched and felt something, a different part would light up. It led to the belief that this is how the brain learns. That's not exactly true. All that is showing is that the brain is recognizing stimuli. It's the senses are being activated, for lack of a better term. But it's not learning. And I'll carry that on in with regards to the work done by Paul Howard-Jones. Jones talked about learning as a very interconnected thing within the brain. It's not about just one sense being lit up, as they talked about in an MRI. It's about reflection. And a whole different part of the brain, all parts of the brain working together, connected, is what great learning is. Mason out of Montreal takes this even a step further. His worry is about money and time and resources. We're wasting all of this stuff trying to perpetuate a myth, something that doesn't exist. What Paul Newton believes is that when you have great meaning and understanding, that has to go way beyond just the simple, I see something. Just because I see it doesn't mean I understand it and I've learned it. And yet we have a bigger problem. That bigger problem are these stats. 93% in England, UK, 96% in the Netherlands, 96% in Greece, 97% in Turkey, and 97% in China. What are these stats? They're the percentage of teachers that believe individuals learn better when they receive information in their preferred learning style. So where are teachers getting all of this information? Why do they believe this? Well, that's what we're going to do now. Let's take a look at the other side of the argument, and that is the academics who truly believe that learning styles work and we actually need to continue using them. So, from a proponent of learning styles, we have this interesting study out of the UK and Hong Kong. Now, although they are clearly recognizing that there is a limited lack of research-based evidence on learning styles and their effectiveness, anecdotally they believe that they're extraordinarily useful and in some contexts should actually continue to be used. Another study came out of Argentina in 2015, which was Ventura and Moscoloni. They believe that they've completely been able to contradict that learning styles are myths. Their study indicates that learning styles genuinely exist and that the educational practice of them being used needs to continue. This is a very interesting study by Prajapati, Dunn, Bartlett, and Cubbage. Theirs was done on optometry students alone. They wanted to find out, do they exist and is it VAK? And they said, no, it's completely balanced. Now, they did use the the Feldman-Silver study or model to figure out the learning style, but they truly believe that learning styles exist. Knadley and Tarkey did something very unique. What he did was he went back and looked at 29 different studies that took place in Turkey, and he found that those whose teachers incorporated learning styles into their content actually had an 81% higher achievement than the group that didn't use learning styles in their content development. So he's firmly behind the idea that learning styles exist and need to continue. What's interesting about all of these studies, specifically the ones that are proponents, is that everybody says, we've got to do more. We've got to do a bigger study. But that leads to that ultimate question of educators and of students. What's right? What's wrong? Which way do I go? And Caulfield believes that people want learning styles because it is a very simple solution to an extraordinarily complex thing. That thing is learning. What is learning? And can you simply say, if you offer it in this domain, people will learn better? Well, in my opinion, the answer is no. And the evidence backs that up. Paul Newton believes that he calls learning styles homeopathic education. There's no evidence that it works, but people think it does anyways. And he believes that it aligns with people's worldview. And finally, those 30 academics who signed that letter to the Guardian newspaper, they believe that that learning styles has an intuitive appeal. As teachers, you look and you see that some students are better than others, and people want answers as to why, but also, how do I level the playing field? And learning styles gives them that answer. So, will we ever know? I believe that ultimately time will tell. There must be a really big study, a huge landmark study that needs to get done. Cross-generational, cross-gender, cross-border, and cross-function, not just these types of students or that types of students, all types of students. I think that would put an end to the controversy, maybe not. I do think, however, there's a lot of companies out there whose lives depend on the fact that this myth continues to perpetuate, because if learning styles were completely proven 100% to not exist, these companies might be out of business. Until that landmark study is done, I do know one thing. People will continue to ask the very first question we asked at the beginning of this presentation, which is, do you know your learning style? I thank you for your time, and here are my references.